right, let's jump right in. Today we're going deep into 19th century Poland, and honestly, I'm excited about this one.
Oh, it's a fascinating period full of change and upheaval.
Exactly, and right at the heart of it all, we've got this guy, Stanisław Wokulski, from a Polish novel called Lalka, which, by the way, means the doll in English.
You know, it's funny, that title alone has sparked so many debates over the years.
Really? Like what?
Well, is it about Wokulski being a puppet of his own desires? Or maybe society pulling the strings? It's something to think about as we go along.
I like that. Adds another layer to the whole thing. Now, we're using a special edition of Lalka for this deep dive, and it's packed with these historical footnotes.
Oh, those footnotes. They're like little windows into the era.
Yeah, so it's not just a story. It's like a whole social commentary, you know? So paint us a picture here. Who is this Wokulski fellow, and what kind of world are we talking about?
Okay, so imagine Warsaw in the mid-1800s. It's a city in transition.
Lots of growing pains, I imagine.
You got it. And we first meet Wokulski as a young shop assistant, just a kid, really, working in this crazy store owned by a guy named Jan Mincel. I mean, this store, it sold everything. Mustard, paint.
Wait, hold on. What kind of store sells mustard and paint together?
I know, right? It's like a bizarre general store. But it gets even weirder. They even had a stuffed crocodile.
A stuffed crocodile?
Yeah.
Seriously, what was that about?
It speaks to the eclectic tastes of the time, I suppose. But, you know, behind this quirky facade, there was a darker reality. Menzel, the shop owner, he was known for his iron fist. Like, literally. The footnotes mention he kept a bundle of whips on display just to keep his employees in line.
Whoa, that's intense.
Yeah.
Not exactly a friendly work environment.
Not at all. It was a reminder of the harsh conditions many workers faced back then.
So Wokulski grows up in this disciplined environment. Yeah, I wonder how that shaped him, especially considering where he ends up later on.
Right. It's like the seeds of ambition were planted right there in that shop. And there's another layer to this. Wokulski's past is a bit mysterious. The novel hints at him participating in the January uprising of 1863.
Ah, the uprising against Russian rule. That was a pivotal moment for Poland. So he was a rebel at heart.
Maybe. It's never explicitly stated what he did, but it adds this whole other dimension to his character. Like, there's this fire in him, this yearning for something more.
Okay, so we have this young guy, molded by hardship, with a rebellious streak and a hunger to rise above his station. Sounds like a recipe for an interesting story. But did he actually manage to break free from that shop? Or did he stay stuck there?
Oh, he breaks free, all right, and in a big way. But not through rebellion, at least not in the traditional sense. He becomes a businessman, a really savvy one.
So he traded in those whips for a ledger book.
Pretty much. He even spent some time in Bulgaria during the Russo-Turkish War, which, by the way, was a boom time for certain entrepreneurs.
Ah, wartime profiteering. Not exactly ethical, but definitely effective.
It was a different time. But yeah, that's where he starts amassing his fortune. Eventually, he comes back to Warsaw, owns shops, invests in real estate. The whole 9 yards.
So from shop boy to real estate tycoon, that's quite a jump. I'd think he'd be welcomed with open arms by Warsaw society. You know, rags to riches, the classic success story.
Not so fast. And this is where Lalka gets really interesting. See, money couldn't buy Wokulski everything.
Meaning what?
Well, the Polish aristocracy, even though they were losing their grip on power, they still clung to their status. And they looked down on anyone who, you know, climbed the social ladder through trade.
Ah, the snobbery of the old elite. Never goes away, does it?
Sadly, no. But, you know, this is central to Wokulski's story. He represents this new class, this rising middle class that was challenging the old order. And this tension, this clash between the old and the new, it runs through the entire novel.
So even though he's successful, he's still an outsider, a threat to the established hierarchy. Fascinating.
Absolutely. And this conflict becomes even more pronounced when we introduce Izabela.
Isabella. That name rings a bell. Didn't you say the novel was called The Doll?
You got it. Izabela is, well, she's the object of Wokulski's affections, let's say. But their relationship, it's complicated. It's about so much more than just romance.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this, Isabella. Who is she, and what makes her so captivating to Wokulski?
She's an aristocratic beauty, the epitome of everything Wokulski longs to be a part of, but she's also a bit of an enigma. Some see her as a symbol of the decaying aristocracy, clinging to a way of life that's fading away.
And Wokulski, he's completely smitten with her.
Oh, absolutely. Head over heels, it borders on obsession. He does some pretty wild things to try and win her over.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, at one point, he buys this rundown tenement building.
A whole building, just like that. Why?
Well, it was a smart investment, but it was also strategic. You see, it was located in a neighborhood where Isabella's family often visited.
So he was trying to get closer to her, literally. That's some next-level dedication or maybe desperation.
Exactly. It shows just how deeply he wants to bridge that social gap between them.
Wow. Okay, so we've got this ambitious businessman trying to break into a society that looks down on him, head over heels, for a woman who represents everything he desires. And he buys a whole building to be near her.
It's just the beginning.
I can't wait to see where this goes. But before we dive into the next chapter of Wokulski's journey, let's take a quick break.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we're back, and we left off with Wokulski, our ambitious entrepreneur, deeply in love with Izabela, but struggling to find his place in this society that constantly judges him. What happens next in Wokulski's quest for, well, love and belonging?
This is where Wokulski's internal struggles really come to the forefront. You know, it's not just those external barriers, the class thing, the social prejudice. He's grappling with his own doubts.
Yeah, I get that. It's like no matter how much you achieve, there's always that inner voice, right? What does that look like for Wokulski? Any specific examples?
Well, there's this scene where he finds himself drawn to the Eka family home late at night.
Sounds a little creepy. Like, is he stalking her? Is that where this love is heading?
It's not so simple. Remember, he's deeply in love, but he's also painfully aware of the social gap between them. And he sees this young musician serenading Izabela from the street.
Oh, so he's watching from afar, like a lovesick teenager.
Kind of, yeah. But it triggers a wave of jealousy, sure, but also this deeper sense of alienation.
Like he'll never truly be a part of her world.
Exactly. And he's carrying all this emotional baggage.
So how does he deal with this? Does he try to win her over with grand gestures? Or confront her directly?
He actually does something pretty unexpected. He has this chance encounter with a beggar on the street, and he kind of breaks down.
Breaks down, like cries.
More like confesses his misery, offers the beggar money. It's almost as if he's projecting his own feelings of inadequacy onto this stranger, seeing himself in this impoverished person.
So this encounter, it's a bit of a turning point, wouldn't you say? Like he's realizing that money can't buy him happiness, or love, for that matter.
Right. And this despair, it spills over into his business decisions. He makes this risky move, purchasing that dilapidated tenement building we talked about earlier, the one in the poor district.
Oh, yeah, the building near Izabela. So was that just a financial gamble or something more?
It was both. On one hand, he was always looking for opportunities, but on the other, it was symbolic, don't you think? Like he was trying to fix societal problems that he couldn't fix in himself.
It's interesting. So this building becomes kind of a microcosm of Warsaw society.
Yes, exactly. We get these glimpses into the lives of the people living there. Impoverished aristocrats, struggling students, shopkeepers, barely making ends meet.
And Wokulski, he's right in the thick of it. How does he handle all these different personalities and social dynamics?
He gets really involved in their lives, uses his wealth and influence to try to improve their conditions. But it's not just simple charity. It's more complicated than that.
Yeah, there's always more to Wokulski, isn't there? Like, what are his motives? Is he genuinely trying to help? Or is it more about assuaging his own guilt?
Those are the questions press wants us to ask. It's about Wokulski searching for meaning beyond his personal pursuits, wrestling with this idea of social responsibility while also battling his own ego.
So much going on internally. But wait, what about Izabela? Has he forgotten about her while he's busy with his social experiment?
Not at all. He's still attending those social gatherings, hoping for a glimpse of her. But instead of fueling his passion, these encounters just make him more disillusioned.
Right, because he sees the reality of the aristocratic world, the emptiness behind the facade.
Exactly. And then, just as he's starting to see things more clearly, he learns that Izabela might marry some wealthy aristocrat, someone from her own circle.
Oh no, that's got to sting, another rival.
Yeah.
So how does Wokulski react? Does he try to sabotage the marriage, finally give up on her?
He's devastated. It confirms his worst fear, that he'll never truly be accepted by her world, no matter how successful he becomes. And it pushes him to a breaking point.
So what does he do? Does he run away to join the circus?
Yeah.
Sail around the world?
He makes a decision that changes everything. He decides to go to Paris.
Paris. The city of lights. Why Paris?
For Wokulski, it's more than just a trip. It's a journey of self-discovery, a desperate attempt to escape his past and find some meaning beyond this love for Izabela.
Wow, Paris. That's a whole new world. I can't wait to hear what happens next. But for now, we'll have to leave it there. Listeners, be sure to join us for the final part of our deep dive into Lalka, where we'll explore Wokulski's Parisian adventures and the dramatic conclusion to this incredible story.
It's a journey you won't want to miss.
Paris. It's almost like Wokulski is running from himself, isn't it? Trying to escape all those complicated emotions. Can you really just leave your problems behind by hopping on a train?
That's the big question, isn't it? He throws himself into Parisian life, the art, the technology, the whole vibe. It's a society embracing progress, and he's captivated by it.
So he's trying to distract himself, maybe even reinvent himself in this new environment. But I mean, we know Wokulski. He can't just sit around sightseeing forever. What catches his eye amidst all the Parisian excitement?
Well, his curiosity leads him to this Professor Geist, a bit of a controversial figure back then.
What made him controversial? What did he do?
Geist was known for his work with hypnotism and mesmerism, exploring the power of suggestion.
Hypnotism. Now that's a twist I wasn't expecting. It was the late 19th century, right? A time of incredible scientific discovery and pushing boundaries. People were fascinated by the mysteries of the mind. Was Prusa making a statement about the power of suggestion, do you think?
Prusa was definitely in tune with the trends of his time. Hypnotism was all the rage. It's fascinating how he weaves it into Wokulski's story. Remember, our guy is heartbroken. He'd do anything to forget Isabella, to erase those painful memories.
So he sees hypnotism as a potential solution.
Right.
Like a quick fix for a broken heart.
Exactly, a way to escape the torment. But he doesn't actually undergo hypnosis himself, at least not directly.
Oh, so what happens?
He witnesses a hypnotic session, Geist demonstrating his methods. It's pretty unsettling.
I bet. I imagine seeing someone control another person's mind like that. Must have been both fascinating and terrifying at the same time.
Absolutely. There are lots of anxieties around these new discoveries, fears of manipulation, of losing control.
So how does Wokulski react to all this? Is he tempted to try it himself?
He's drawn to it at first. Imagine being able to wipe away painful memories, start fresh. Who wouldn't be tempted? But as he observes Geist, something shifts.
What changes his mind?
I think he sees the potential for abuse, for manipulation, messing with someone's mind like that.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope. And maybe, even more importantly, he realizes that erasing those memories wouldn't solve anything. It would be denying a part of himself, a part that shaped who he is.
It's like he's finally confronting his past instead of running from it. Does this mark a turning point for him?
It does. He returns to Warsaw, but not before some serious soul-searching. He goes back to his childhood village, spends time in nature, trying to find some grounding after all the turmoil.
Back to his roots. That makes sense. So what awaits him in Warsaw? Is it the same society that rejected him? Or has something changed?
On the surface, Warsaw seems the same. The aristocracy is still caught up in their social rituals, oblivious to the real struggles of ordinary people. But for Wokulski, everything is different. He sees through the facade. His experiences, his internal journey, they've changed his perspective.
So he's no longer blinded by the allure of that world, of desperate need for acceptance. How does this affect his feelings for Isabella? Has he finally moved on?
It's complicated. He still cares for her, but the intensity of his obsession has faded. He sees her flaws more clearly, her shallowness, but he also recognizes her vulnerability. She's trapped in this system too.
It's almost tragic, right? They're both victims of circumstance. So what happens? Does he try to rekindle their relationship? Or does he accept that they've grown apart?
He does try to reconnect, but there's this gap between them now. They're speaking different languages. He's talking about progress, social change, a better world, and she's stuck on maintaining her social status, finding a suitable husband.
They're on totally different wavelengths. So how does it end? Does he find closure?
And here's where Prusa throws us a curveball. The ending of Lalka is famously ambiguous. Wokulski disappears. We never find out what happens to him.
He just vanishes, without a trace. What are we supposed to make of that? Is Prusa just messing with us?
I think it's brilliant. It forces us to think about Wokulski's fate, the choices he made, the complexity of his character. Did he choose to end his own life, escape to a new beginning? Or is his disappearance a symbolic act of rebellion against a world that never understood him?
Wow. So many possibilities. Like Prusa is inviting us to write our own ending to the story.
Exactly. And that's what makes Lalka so powerful. It's a novel that stays with you long after you finish reading it. It makes you think about ambition, love, social change, the search for meaning, timeless themes that are still relevant today.
Well, listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our deep dive into Lalka and the enigmatic character of Stanisław Wokulski. It's a story that will stay with me, that's for sure.
It's a novel that deserves to be read, discussed, and debated.
Absolutely. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to pick up a copy of Lalka. explore its rich historical context, and ponder the mysteries it presents.
And who knows, maybe you'll come up with your own interpretation of Wokulski's fate.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those minds engaged.